Welcome to mediamelanie TV. Today I'm back to talk about Only Murders in the Building, Season 5, Episode 8, called Cuckoo Birds. We learned quite a bit of information in this episode, so in today's video I'm going to review it, but also go through a list of suspects and theories to see if we can actually maybe figure this out before Episode 9, which is typically when we do get that big reveal. But before I do, also first of all, sorry about the weird blurry backgrounds, getting some work done around the house, that'll be cleared up very soon. But I wanted to shout out everybody who's been watching and commenting along with me this season. There have been so many solid theories and suspect discussions in the comments, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those before I get into the review. First of all, there's been a lot of chatter about the babies that Lorraine was initially pushing in that stroller when she first met Lester. They would not have showed us that scene unless it meant more, right? We've got to see some kind of payoff. And some interesting things about that as well. George, the old doorman, had told Lester, oh, get her out of here. She's homeless. First of all, she did not look homeless whatsoever. Second of all, were there actually babies in the stroller in the first place? And we assume that there are two of them. Who could the babies have been? First of all, when I went back and was doing some quick math in my head, I initially thought those babies would now be somewhere around 55 years old, perhaps Nicky, Camilla, or even Mayor Tillman. But in going back and doing more research on the actual timeline based on how long Lester has been a doorman, etc., it seems like those babies would now be somewhere in their 30s, which would potentially narrow it down to Mabel, maybe Althea, or Jay Flug. He is in his mid-30s, or at least Logan Lerman, who plays him, is. So I'm not sure exactly how that connects, but it's making me think more and more that Althea is more involved in this than we may think. She gave Mabel those pink boots, which have a rubber sole. Something else people have been talking about is the black spots in front of Charles' refrigerator for whoever ended up taking that finger. Could Althea have just been making up the entire mushroom thing and it was actually her and she gave away the boots as evidence to try to pin it on Mabel, or at least divert suspicion from her? Or was it Lester the robot who maybe Bash programmed to go in and take the finger? I've got to think it's one of them. But now in thinking about Althea somehow being in that stroller and then coming back to buy in the Arconia, just at the time when the billionaires are trying to turn it into a casino, is there a tie between Althea and Jay? Could they maybe be related and working together? And maybe Jay put Althea in the Arconia in order to be a holdout for Camilla, who's obviously trying to buy up the apartments. The only thing about that is it seems as though Camilla has won. She got the 51% that she needed. So either it was a failed plan by Jay and Althea, or this is just a wild theory that actually does not hold any water. And back to the babies. Was Lorraine nannying for somebody in the Arconia, or is there some kind of a connection between Lorraine and Flatbush? Nicky and Lester both grew up there. Let's say Lorraine did too. Is there a Caccimelio family connection, or maybe Lorraine is pushing one of Sofia Caccimelio's babies? Now, what's interesting about that is I went back and looked a little bit more into the youngest son, Brayden. He's shorter than the rest of them. He's got a mustache that looks mysteriously like Lester's. In this episode, we learned that Sofia Caccimelio had an affair. I don't necessarily think that Nicky recently caught her sleeping with somebody. I think that because there was all of this talk about Sophia and her family's reputation being tarnished, and potentially by Nicky, who's a failed mobster, what if the affair was years ago? And because Nicky said that it was pathetic, to me, that means somebody who could have been the help, such as a doorman, and Nicky maybe recently found out about it or has known all along. What if Nicky told Brayden that Lester was his father, Brayden confronted Lester, and there's some sort of tie in there where maybe Brayden accidentally killed his biological father? If we look at all of the Caccimelio sons' fingers, because obviously a finger has been a big part of this, a lot of them are wearing rings, which could indicate potentially a prosthetic. Brayden in particular has a ring, a Band-Aid. A lot of these characters actually have rings, and I think the ring is actually meant to throw us off, and if they just put rings on everybody, it's harder to narrow down exactly who it is. So I am starting to think, okay, maybe one of Sophia's sons, probably Brayden, was an illegitimate child. And then I started looking more into cowbirds, who is what Nicky was defined as by Lester. Now, Lester may have misidentified. I think there was a statement in there at some point that he wasn't necessarily the best at identifying the birds. But let's say Nicky is the cowbird. Cowbirds are known for laying eggs in other people's nests and having other people raise the baby. So what if Nicky is actually the one who was raising a baby that wasn't his, and Lester called him a cowbird because he actually knows, because he slept with Sophia and they had a child together? All right, before I get more into some of these theories, please go ahead, like this video, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I am on a journey to become a full-time TV content creator. Every time you tune in with me helps me get one step closer. And I'm also trying to hit 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So I would really appreciate if you do hit that button. And I'm talking about some other TV shows right now. Finishing up coverage of Gen V, which is in the universe of The Boys. Additionally, Task on HBO, which has been very dark, and this penultimate episode this week was just pure fire. Coming up later this month, Welcome to Derry, the Telemasca. In November, Maxton Hall for all my teen drama people out there. And in December, Fallout. And who knows what else is going to be announced in between then. But I appreciate you sticking with me for all of the TV talk. But now, back to Only Murders in the Building. Now, another thing that has been discussed in the comments is Algie, who is Bash's child. Is he potentially a hologram and he was being projected into that pool? I do find it suspicious that Bash in the last episode said, "Get back down to the basement now." Or is he a robot? Now, speaking of robots, people have also been saying that Bash's niece Rami, who is working for Mayor Tillman, could also be some kind of like clone or AI or robot. And I don't necessarily buy that. And I don't necessarily buy either that she is a suspect in any of this. I think she's a red herring because honestly, if the show was to make another assistant similar to Poppy, Cinda's assistant, in an earlier season, for me, that would be such a cop-out. If anything, I think the mayor could be more guilty because he was so quick to say, "Oh, Bash is your suspect," because obviously he's been under Bash's thumb. But at the same time, I think with all of these different indicators pointing to the mayor, at least for me, it does seem a little bit too obvious. So I don't necessarily think it's him. Now, something else people have been talking about is the cryo chamber in the last episode, which was just sort of in the background there. Nicky's body, we know, was preserved. So was it preserved in Bash's cryo chamber instead of a refrigerator or freezer? To me, that would also make it too obvious pointing to Bash. I don't necessarily buy that Bash is behind the murder. I do think he's a crazy billionaire, very eccentric. But what if somebody put him in there who had a connection to Bash? It doesn't seem as though his estate has a lot of security, so could somebody have snuck in there and put the body in there? Potentially Camilla or Jay? I don't know who put it there, but I am starting to think that that could be exactly where Nicky's body was while he was missing and when Sophia had gone to the trio to look for him. But we also learned in this episode that Camilla had this connection to Nicky. 2 years ago, she had that conversation with him at the bar, asked to have the ladies' night. And then later in the episode, when Loretta was going all woo-woo trying to get the information from Camilla, first of all, we learn why she's wearing the gloves. I think her wearing the gloves, I think Randall wearing the gloves, I think anybody who is wearing gloves, at least for me, is not the suspect. Again, I think that's something that is just far too obvious. But the conversation that Camilla had with Nicky when he was missing, and she's like, "Hey, the whole city is looking for you." Nicky mentions to Camilla about the affair. And then later in the episode, Camilla says, "Ooh, effing doorman." And at first I'm thinking, oh, Lester. Maybe Lester is tied into this because he was the one that slept with Sophia and that put sort of a kink into the whole plan. But I think that she was actually talking about Randall, who is discovered on the footage to be taking the elevator crank. Somebody had edited that footage to not show that it was Randall. I don't think it was Randall. So who then is Randall either blackmailing or covering for? Now that's another big question right now. And something else that some of you commenters have pointed out was Loretta even in New Zealand. There was one comment in here when Oliver said to her, "We really didn't know each other very well before we got married." Is that one of the biggest clues of all? And Loretta even sort of made fun at the fact that she's already been accused of murder before. what would be a bigger surprise than to actually have her be a murderer? There is some connection between Lorraine and Loretta. Could they be secret sisters? I do not know exactly about that, but with the Tosca connection and the dagger, I don't know, something to me just seems a little bit off. And the fact that when Loretta was in Lorraine's apartment when she was selling it or whatever, that mobster guy who was coughing, could the cough have been from him setting the fire? Somebody else had mentioned that as well, and I've talked about that too, but something with Loretta is just not sitting right. Now, yes, we know she was at the airport because she did see Detective Williams there who was going on a trip. But I just think there is something very fishy here with this connection between Lorraine and Loretta. And what if Loretta actually has kids and those were the kids in the stroller that Lorraine was pushing? I don't know, just keep going back to these babies because they just, again, would not have shown us this if there wasn't going to be some kind of connection here. Now, people are also talking about the fact that could Nicky and the mayor have been having some kind of affair? Because the gardenia that Nicky wears on his lapel is meant to signify forbidden love. And something with that too. The flower has changed sides on different parts of the show. Is there significance in that? Or let's say the mayor and Nicky were having some kind of a love affair and I don't know, maybe Sophia found out about it or something, and that would be a disgrace to her family. Would Sophia have then potentially taken out Nicky to avoid this embarrassment? But also, Nicky kind of seemed like he was into women, especially with that conversation with Camilla, who says, hey, I only hit on a woman if she wants me to. So does that mean he actually does like women? Or does it mean that he actually likes guys and would only be hitting on women just to keep up this sort of facade? What do you guys think? Just one more thing back to Loretta really quickly that I forgot to mention. So if the apartment was burned down on purpose, whether or not Loretta had a hand in it, all of that could have been tied into Camilla's plan. So maybe Camilla could have actually been the one behind burning down Loretta's apartment. Because also, she came in, she did the whole remodel. We know she's got these quick crews. We know that the casino room was cleaned really well after whatever went down there. So, I mean, maybe Camilla is tied into it somehow. I was listening to one of Matt and Jess's, my friend's videos, and they had pointed out, a lot of the show is formulaic, where the perpetrator tends to be somebody that is a mid character, someone we don't see all the time. And it would actually really shake things up if they did make it one of the big guest stars. And Camilla would be perfect for that. I mean, maybe, or the mayor, but I don't know. With everything that went down with Camilla, either she's definitely guilty or they're still trying to throw us off course here. The three clues we saw at the end of this episode were the In Excess magazine with Camilla on it, the Bird app, and the Ladies' Night invite. Things are triangulating in a way that should seemingly come together, but I'm just having a hard time. I don't know if it's my critical thinking skills or if they're just purposely throwing so many things out there to throw us off course. And yes, obviously it's a murder mystery show, so that's a big part of it. All of these things I feel like I'm one step away from connecting the dots. And I'm hoping that you guys who've been so great with all of your theories and predictions chime in this video and let me know where your head's at with some of these new revelations. There's also the possibility, Camilla said, F that doorman. If it was not Lester and she was talking about Randall, who did take the elevator crank, could Sophia have slept with Randall? And that's why Nicky was like, that's pathetic. Now, there is quite an age difference here, but hey, she's a cougar and maybe Randall's into that sort of thing. If they had slept together and maybe it was more recent and it wasn't a long ago affair that yielded an illegitimate child, maybe Randall is trying to cover for Sophia, and somehow the footage got erased by one of the billionaires who could behind the scenes be working with Sophia. I mean, what if Camilla, she had this connection to Nicky, ended up going back to Sophia and saying, hey, I found your husband who everybody thinks is missing, and somehow there's a connection there. And then I'm thinking, the elevator crank, it was found in Nicky's office. Randall obviously would have put it there for a reason. So was Randall just trying to frame Nicky for Lester's death? But at the same time, I guess maybe the police wouldn't have necessarily had access there because Nicky's office, I would surmise, is somewhere down in the whole casino situation or behind one of those secret doors. So if Randall wasn't trying to frame Nicky, why put it there? Was he leaving it there for somebody to then come and collect later? Where do you guys think the elevator crank fits in? Obviously, it seems that it should be the murder weapon because it was taken from the scene of the crime. Or was it used for some other purpose and is just a whole nother red herring here? The fact that it comes to light again and Randall's taking it, there is something sus AF about that crank. Lorraine even mentioned the crank. Also, speaking of other things, Lorraine mentioned when she saw Lester's hat in the case, oh, they finally cleaned Lester's hat. Now, is the cleaning alluding to Camilla and her cleanup crew, or is Lorraine somehow involved in this and maybe she did find out Lester slept with Sophia and she killed her husband Lester in a fit of rage? None of us really suspect Lorraine, but she would actually be kind of the perfect character. She's a relatively big guest star. She's somebody who we haven't really seen before. And with all of the emphasis on her in this episode, starting it out, narrating and saying luck is a lady and comparing it again to a literary medium, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is Lorraine. And maybe Lorraine and Sophia are secretly sisters, or maybe Loretta and Lorraine are sisters. But I think that Lorraine is really coming to light as somebody who knows a lot more than she is saying. Or did she pick up the hat to put her fingerprints on it because she knows that maybe they were on there for some other reason if she was guilty, and she just wanted to put them on there so that way it would detract and she'd say, oh, well, no, I just picked it up in the lobby in the case, which also wasn't locked, which I found interesting, but I don't know. I think that's the least of our concerns right now. And did anybody else notice that Althea had her hands in her sleeve in this episode? I did go back and look, and it didn't appear that she did have any hidden fingers in past episodes, but I will say that Brayden, back to the Caccimelios, his hand was hidden behind the chair at the beginning of the encounter with the trio, and when he slammed his finger or his hand down, he kind of like shook it off like something hurt, so maybe it could be tied into that. And actually, I've been going back and really looking closely at everybody's fingers. And I think because there are billionaires involved, there could be a very high-end prosthetic situation here where maybe it is a prosthetic. It looks like it could be normal, but the prosthetic would maybe show more of some of the other fingers not moving properly. Have you guys been paying attention to the fingers? There's been a lot of talk about mainly the mayor's finger here, or anybody who's wearing gloves. And again, I don't think the gloves are part of it. And I also just think the mayor has inserted himself in so much of this that it's really having to do more with this casino contractor potentially being blackmailed by one of the billionaires in order to get it passed. And back to Nicky for a second with the whole affair situation. What if Nicky threatened Sophia to out the fact that she did have this illegitimate child with a doorman, and Sophia is connected to Mayor Tillman in some way and is tied into the whole casino contract? And maybe then Nicky says, hey, I'm going to support Camilla here and take this casino away from whatever the mob affiliations or underground affiliations are and support her casino publicly. And maybe Sophia didn't want that because she wanted her sons to take over the casino or something. Could there be this big face-off and war between Camilla and Sophia? The fact that now that we have Nicky and Camilla connected, I think that's also a pretty big possibility. And back to the finger and the trophy. If that's the key to everything, that could mean a couple of different things. Whoever's finger it is being blackmailed by the millionaires in order to get this contract for the casino passed. Most likely, Camilla would have something to do with it because ultimately she's the one that ends up getting the ownership of the Arconia. Let's say Tillman had to get Nicky out of the way for some reason in order to get this passed, and it is, in fact, the mayor's finger. Or some of you other commenters have been mentioning, maybe this finger opens up some kind of secret room or lair where the deed to the Arconia actually is, and it's literally a key to getting the ownership of the Arconia because you can't have it unless you have the deed, which could have been hidden back in the speakeasy days in one of these secret rooms. And I mean, if the finger is literally a key to something, then what is it? Is it the deed? Is it something else? Is there another secret room hidden within the Arconia, or maybe even the dry cleaner that we're just not aware of quite yet that ties in? At this point, really anything is possible, and I'm throwing a bunch of stuff out there to see what sticks, and I have a feeling hopefully by episode 9, we will have a clearer picture of who it is, and then obviously episode 10 could be the fallout and the big reveal like they always have. And back to the Caccimelio sons yet again. What if it wasn't necessarily Brayden, but one of the other sons found out that the mom had an affair and had an illegitimate child, and for some reason Brayden was going to inherit something because there's this Lester involvement and he was involved with Nicky and the casino? Could one of the other brothers have actually been guilty? A lot of them are wearing the rings, and they were doing it in a way to either protect their mother, or maybe it's the oldest brother who is trying to maintain his connection to the casino by Nicky. But the more I think about it, between the babies and the Caccimelio children, I just think there's got to be some connection. And I mean, again, the Caccimelio children, a couple of them, could have been the ones in the stroller that Lorraine was pushing as well. And we know Lorraine and Sophia have the connection, the whole Tommy the Tongue and getting the money, but they also do the theater together. Loretta is an actress as well. Could all three of the women be connected in some way? And it's some sort of murder triumvirate situation that we're going to stumble into this time. And also at one point, Lester mentions, my kids are all grown, and Nicky mentions that he put his kids through college. So if Nicky has known the entire time and supported one or more of Lester's kids that Nicky was raising, that would explain why Lester's kids were not at the funeral, at least to my knowledge. So that to me seems like a big possibility as well. And overall, I just think this episode was pretty okay. I think the whole Loretta woo-woo thing was just mostly a plot device in order to get the information out of Camilla. I didn't necessarily love that. I do think the ladies' night thing was kind of fun, and they did end up talking about boys. There was a quick moment there, too, where I noticed Detective Williams was sort of side-eyeing the woman in the vest as they were walking into the casino. And I'm like, oh, is there a connection? Is this lady spying on them and is going to go report to somebody? But I do think that had more to do with her getting the idea to put on the vest and be the dealer, so that way she could somehow influence this game that Camilla ended up partaking in. And there's obviously some kind of connection with Ladies' Night because Camilla initially asked for this 2 years ago. If there is a connection between Camilla and Althea, and Althea is the one who says, hey, I got this invitation, and she actually doesn't end up going, does anybody else think it was also super sus that Althea is going to invite all these other ladies, but she's not going to go? I think that something is circling around Althea, and I am wondering, again, could Althea and Jay be siblings, and sort of her dad or their relationship is what has contributed to her big success as a recording artist as well? And there's the connection with Wonderfi there. So maybe they're making us seem like Jay is this kind of nice guy and letting Mabel go, etc., etc. And another commenter actually pointed out that Selena Gomez had a well-documented crush on Logan Lerman a few years ago. So to have this dynamic in the show is actually pretty funny. I was not aware of that. So thank you to the commenter who pointed that out as well. Overall, you guys, there's a lot of information to digest. We got a lot of different revelations here. I'm starting to suspect a few different people, and I think there's a far bigger conspiracy here than we thought. And I do think that Lester and Nicky had definitely two separate murderers, but they're all somehow tied into this bigger picture of the Caccimelios, of the mayor, of the billionaire. So I am just dying to see how this ends up turning out. I'm hoping one of these things I mentioned ends up coming to fruition, but as it is, a lot of times we get things wrong and they end up subverting our expectations. So I'll be back again next week to cover it, see what else we can discern, and hopefully we will get the information that we're looking for. I really appreciate all of you tuning in. Thank you so much. And again, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and like this video, and be sure to drop all of your thoughts and theories. Do you think I am crazy for presenting some of these ideas, or is there potential that one of them is actually correct? I'll be back again soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.